What's up, guys? This is Stevan Micic, and I'm back today with another tier list video. I'm going to be ranking the Big Ten wrestling schools here. For you guys who don't know, wrestling in the Big Ten is the biggest. Big Ten conference is the strongest in wrestling, so this is like what matters most when it comes to wrestling. And usually one of the teams here is finishing and winning the title, if not every year, than the last close to 20 years now. With the college season just starting up here, I think this would be a pretty fun one. But I want to make something clear: there's a lot of teams right now that are improving and getting better. And I've been out of college for a couple of years, so I'm not really locked in exactly knowing which teams are kind of better here or there, or have gotten worse. So don't take that out on me. This is just my list and kind of what I know and think of when I think of college wrestling from these programs. I wrestled in college. I've been in there. I felt it. Knowing it another level from being a fan. So I have an understanding of it, but then also being detached from college wrestling for a couple years. But I want to remind you too, this isn't a 2024-25 tier list. This is just a tier list of the colleges, kind of their whole aura, the legacy that they've built in their programs over the last 10 to 20 years, over the last decade or two. Before we get into it, guys, remember, subscribe to this channel, like the video, and turn the notification bells on. And remember, the 1-year YouTube anniversary giveaway for the ONEV hoodie is going to be releasing next week. It's your last chance to get this. 2 more videos out until we release it. So 3 simple steps, all right? Subscribe to the YouTube, follow my Instagram, and follow onev.world on Instagram. The links are in description. So let's get into it, baby. All right, so I found a tier list here that has all 14 schools. It's not really in order or anything, but I've also, it has some of the names. Easily the best. It's not even close. Not bad, actually. Utter trash, and Rutgers. Maybe I'll leave that one for you Rutgers fans out there. No, I'm kidding. We're actually going to move it to where we have S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier. First, we're starting with Northwestern, which is funny because Northwestern is actually the school I committed to out of high school. I went to Northwestern for a year and ended up transferring to Michigan from Northwestern. But Northwestern actually has a pretty solid, they're a pretty solid team. When you think about the Big Ten, it's one of the original teams. And when you think about the Northwestern's they're not always the deepest team throughout. They do have national champs, coming through the program. It just isn't, they've had problems having full rosters sometimes and having, getting the best recruits. But over the years, they've developed NCAA champs. When I was there, a lot of the promise was early on with me being, ranked #1 coming out of high school, along with 2 others, Bryce Brill and Johnny Sebastian. We were both, we made Northwestern the #1 recruiting class, and kind of we were piggybacking off of Jason Sertzis, who just won his national title for Northwestern. And they've, but then with some coaching changes and transfers, like I ended up leaving. There's always been other things, but Storniolo's done a really good job. Andrew Howe was there as well. He was from my high school. Jimmy Kennedy, Joe Colon, and they've developed, Ryan Deacon to become a national champion for Northwestern, as well as multiple All-Americans. And then before that, too, they had Jake Herbert, who's a 2-time national champ, Mike McMullen, NCAA runner-up at heavyweight, Jason Welch, NCAA runner-up around 157, I believe, Brandon Preeson. So, I mean, Northwestern's been solid, so I'll give them, kind of B tier. They're in this middle of the pack overall for teams, but they've had champs, so I'm going to probably put them in the B tier. They're going to be somewhere there. Going into Iowa now, Iowa is iconic, a program. They're an S tier program. Maybe in the recent years they haven't been as strong team-wise, and they've kind of fallen back a little bit. They're kind of toward the Brands brothers are a little bit toward the end of an era. They've been coaching for a long time there. But Iowa, one of the most distinguished wrestling colleges in the country, most historic wrestling programs ever, having, I think, some of the most titles, led with, Dan Gale starting that off, that whole wrestling push and legacy Iowa style, being in, the 70s, and then wrestling and then coaching for Iowa, even though he went to Iowa State, but coaching at Iowa, and then, the Brands brothers taking it, and they've always had a very solid team from start to finish, getting the best recruits around the country. They've also had a really good lightweight presence, having Spencer Lee, who's a 3-time national champion, Tony Ramos, national champion, Matt McDonough, 2-time NCAA champ, Daniel Dennis, runner-up at 133. So it's like, I think there's just been, always a really strong presence at lightweights, always 25 and 33. They've always had kind of nailed down to some extent. And then throughout the upper weights as well, and then heavy, they've always been one of the teams. They're what can I say? They're S tier. Oh, and can't forget the great Brett Metcalf as well. He was the one who really kept and stamped a mark on Iowa wrestling, being a 2-time national champ and just kind of being dominant as he was. So moving on, Maryland. It hurts me to say that, when looking at all of these teams, I just think of Maryland. I just think that they're kind of at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to universities in the Big Ten for the wrestling. It's just they've kind of couldn't catch a break. I feel like they've had issues with coaches and getting recruits and, just not having as much emphasis on on wrestling as maybe other programs, and they've just kind of had misfortune, I think, holding. But they have had All-Americans over the years. My friend Yusuf Amito was an NCAA All-American heavyweight. They've had a lot of guys like Baby J, Alfred Bannister, and just I think overall Maryland has had a solid program, and they just can't. First of all, they're in the toughest conference, but they've had teams also. They've had years where they've been really, really weak and have been blanked, and to teams that maybe usually wouldn't have beaten them as bad as they were. So I'm probably going to put Maryland at the as last for now. But I think I don't know if they're slowly coming up, but correct me if I'm wrong on any of these where I maybe rank something a little bit lower. Next, we got Minnesota. Now, Minnesota, has been a wrestling school for a while. Minnesota's crazy because I remember in the day, there was a year where Minnesota won a team title, a national title in the 2000s without having a champion. So it shows you how deep their roster was at a point. I always liked their school because the maroon and the gold actually, and the Gophers. It's pretty unique, and I just thought it's a cool program that's always had some guys. The Ness brothers coming through there as well. Zach Sanders, the McKees. I just think it's a cool program. In general, Minnesota has always been pretty sick, in my opinion. So I'll give them an A. They just aren't where they used to be, and they've definitely fallen off. They're probably going to be toward the bottom of A. Maybe, you know what? I'll probably give them B for right now, just because of how the performance has been. But could fit in the A. So I'll just kind of put them here. I might move them up later. All right, Nebraska. Okay, so Nebraska is a program very similar to Minnesota, but maybe not as deep. 20 years ago. I feel like Nebraska is something that's kind of gotten stronger over the years, having Burroughs, James Green, a lot of different wrestlers coming through now, Ridge Lovett, Peyton Robb. There's a lot of really good wrestlers that are kept it, Chad Red, that Nebraska's kind of been able to kind of keep on the up move. Isaiah White, they've just been kind of doing really well. They just aren't a team, and they're very scrappy. They win a lot of duels. They can compete against Iowa. They can compete against Michigan. They can compete against Ohio State. But anyways, Nebraska is one of those programs that just kind of, they can compete against anybody. They do well. They can win some duels. It's just kind of hard for them to piece together some Big Tens and national tournaments. So I'll probably put them in the highest up in B, where, like I said, maybe A. I mean, they could fit in A as well. I don't know. But like I said, right now in my head, I think that Nebraska probably is a little bit better of a program than Minnesota, or at least has been when I was in school, especially. So I'll probably lean in with that. All right, Michigan, my school, the leaders and the best, of course. Those who stay become champions. Come on, they're a top school for sure. I mean, right now, from what they've been able to do over the past 8 to 10 years, their program really shifted. Where maybe I would have probably put them in the B tier. They've really risen up, especially they've had champions. They've had Ryan Bertine and Kellen Russell and very strong wrestlers over the years, but they've kind of they had a little bit more of an edge than Northwestern, but they were kind of similar. But then I feel like when I got into school, and not to pat myself on the back, I'm not trying to do that, but I just felt like me and Miles Amin and Logan Massa were able to kind of come in as freshmen and help change the program a little bit with guys along with like Dom Abinator, Brian Murphy, Alec Pantelio, Adam Kuhn. And we were just really able to build a full team around this and move it to where I remember. And then we got, I think, Kevin Beasley transferred in, and we ended up getting a trophy, taking 4th place in 2018. And from that point on, we were able to really stay in that top 5 in the country mix, moving forward, where we had beaten Iowa in duels, we had beaten Ohio State, and by the end of it, I remember being the better team against Ohio State in most of the duels in the last 4 or 5 years. So Michigan's just kind of always had that mark. So I'll give Michigan an A tier. We won the Big Ten title in 2022, taking second to Penn State in the NCAA. So I mean, Michigan's always been a great program that's kind of shifted, and now having champ like Nick Suriano was a champion, Mason Paris, Lucas Davison getting runner-up, Dylan Ragason's in the mix, they've Will Lewan, Cameron Mean, they're moving on and they're getting better. So it's cool to see Michigan being a program like that, and I would give them S tier. It's just tough right now with how dominant Penn State's been in the past 10 years that to kind of when Michigan finally has risen up. So we'll see, and I think they're on their way to S tier if they can keep it up, and then if Penn State starts to fall, Michigan can strike. So go blue. Now, Illinois. Now, Illinois is a program where I remember as a kid, Illinois was pretty cool, just how scrappy they were, having Mike Poeta and Jesse Delgado. I just think they've kind of fallen a little bit lackluster, and they've just kind of been in the middle of the pack range where, them and Northwestern probably fight now, can actually duel, where I'm not even sure who wins those. I mean, Northwestern might end up winning it. Illinois, I could even see it being in the C tier. But we'll see what happens with Poeta taking over and seeing how the team's kind of shifts now. There's some solid wrestlers in Illinois. I don't have too much to say. It has a really good art. There are good wrestlers. It has a good RTC. Brian Medlin's doing a good job. I think overall, they're doing a good job training with a lot of different people. It's just I'm not sure how their college is producing. I know they get a lot of in-state guys from Illinois because Illinois is a tough state. They just don't get always the top blue chippers. And I think that's their problem. Is like Illinois, as soon as they start getting their top guys, the #1 kids in the country that from Chicago that are leaving somewhere else, that's when Illinois is going to move up to the top. So, but we'll see. So I'll move them. I don't want to put them in C, but I'm gonna put it at the end of B tier. Maybe I'll put it in the top. I'll put it in top of C tier to even it out, and we'll see how things move. All right, Rutgers. Rutgers is tough too because Rutgers has been scrappy in the past few years. I remember that I think one year, Suriano and Ashnault both won a national title in the same year. But overall than that, Rutgers isn't always the toughest team. They're scrappy, they're tough. They just aren't to the next level, and I'm not sure where they stand compared to some of these other schools. You could put them in the mix for B tier, but I think at one point they were. But I'm probably going to put them in C, and they're probably in the mix here somewhere with Illinois. So I might have to put them somewhere in C tier. Don't get mad at me from the tiers of who's better. If Rutgers is better than Illinois, I don't know who would win the duel this year. I'm just gonna have to wait and watch it this year, I guess. So let's keep going. Ohio State. Ohio State definitely is in the A tier, and I definitely would, it's kind of in that same ranking as Michigan, where, they just haven't been able to pass Iowa and Penn State. I would give Ohio State the edge here in A over Michigan for the sole fact they did win a national team title back, I think 2016 or 2017, where they put it together and they ended up kind of breaking that streak out of nowhere, beating, Iowa and Penn State in that team race. Michigan's really, where Michigan's really passed them in the last few years, but I would probably, still have to say it gives the edge to Ohio State, but I'm from Michigan. I'm going to put them behind us, so sorry about that. Go Blue, baby. Yeah, but for real, those are my A tier schools. All right, Wisconsin. Now, Wisconsin isn't a great program. I know I probably could have given Wisconsin a little more as a state some props in my tier ranking video because, with Akron Academy and having some other really good wrestlers come from there. Mitchell Messenbrink, Alex Daringer, tons of really good wrestlers come from Wisconsin. So, out of that Akron Academy. Wisconsin, I don't think they're that program, even though they've had some good wrestlers, they've had some good transfers in like Seth Gross and Austin Gomez. They just aren't deep anymore, and I probably put them, in the C, probably behind Illinois. All right, Purdue. Purdue actually has kind of gotten solid. I don't know what it is. I think having a guy like a Matt Ramos and then having some solid upper and middle weight guys that are just performing. I think Purdue has gotten strong, and I think, so anyways, yeah, Purdue, they get a solid roster, and they are, better than they used to be when I was younger. When I was younger, being from Indiana, I just was like, I don't know about Purdue. I was never sure, but I mean, you have to put them somewhere in this list. I mean, they could even be at the end of B, beginning of C. I will probably put them in the front of C for now. We'll just kind of do it from there. But Purdue is solid for sure, and they're improving slowly, and they're kind of solidifying them as kind of like that at that Northwestern level. I would say they're solid. They're a real Big Ten school for wrestling. Indiana University. So I think Indiana is a growing program. Actually, Bloomington, Angel Escobedo is doing an excellent job down there, and he's getting the recruits and the right people. However, if I were to maybe move this into a list of what it is now, Indiana definitely isn't the school what it used to be. So you know, when I was younger and what Indiana was, and they do have a legacy of Angel Escobedo and Andre Hernandez and many other Indiana greats that have came from IU. They probably sit in that D tier. I mean, maybe at the end of the C, but I would be, you know, I can't leave Maryland here alone. They probably are in the D tier, and they probably are going to get some wins over schools like, you know, maybe Wisconsin or Illinois or Rutgers, and they're definitely going to prove themselves this year. I mean, I'm betting on it. I really, really hope Indiana thrive, and I think that's a great place for Indiana, for people to end up going. I think it's you know, they're getting the right recruits. They're getting really good nationally ranked kids, state champs. I think Indiana is going to turn its program around, and it's going to move up to this, where I would maybe in 5 years from now move it to a B tier and higher. It's gonna grow. It's gonna be a place to be great. So I have to for the justice of this video. Next, we've got Penn State. You know, Penn State's Penn State. What they've been able to do, I don't think's ever really been done in wrestling. The consistency over teams like Iowa, Oklahoma State, Ohio State, Michigan, Missouri, Cornell. They just win every single. Cale Sanderson's really changed that program completely to a program that wasn't anything. They were pretty, you know, above average when I was a kid, and when Cale went there, and then David Taylor went, and they had that whole, like, David Taylor, Ed Ruth, McIntosh, I believe. I mean, they were crazy. Nico Megaludis, Frank Molinaro, they were insane. So I just have to say that, you know, starting from that, and then you think that it doesn't stop? No, they just keep getting better. They get Mark Hall, they have Bo Nickel, they get Kassar, they have, you know, then they get all of a sudden, you think it's over? No. You have Aaron Brooks, you have Roman Bravo Young, you have Carter Starachi. It just like, it just kept getting better and better and better. Jason Nolf. I'm forgetting probably so many names, and I don't have to name everybody, and I'm not gonna. Nick Lee. I can't forget Nick Lee again. You know, two-time national champion from Indiana. So Penn State, I mean, they just win the team race. They're great, and I don't know how they're gonna slow down. So they're S tier. They're iconic. They solidified themselves. One of the best wrestling schools ever. And last but not least, Michigan State, my little brother, Michigan's little brother. They have struggled in the past. They've had some tough individuals back in the early 2000s. The Simmons brothers, Nick and Andy, and then having, you know, Franklin Gomez be a national champion, which is really, really cool. I always root for Michigan State still, even though I just think they're probably still in the D tier, and they've had some struggles. I've had some friends go to Michigan State and wrestle, and they do really well, and they still have they're still solid. But I have to move them down in this D tier, probably in between Indiana and Maryland. But we'll see how they're going to do over the next few years. We'll see. And like I said, guys, this list, even though this is the Big Ten and this is the Big Ten rankings, most of these teams are still in the top 25 in the country, if not all of them, which is insane for Division I. To just show you how deep, 14 of these schools are pretty much in the top 25 to 30 teams in the country for wrestling. That's half of the teams are in the Big Ten, over half. So this is just ranking them and putting them in a tier list for my own personal, not just belief, but what I kind of know how the Big Ten has worked over the past few years. That's all for today. I hope you guys enjoy. I hope you like it. Let me know in the comments where you'd rank the teams, where you'd move them up, what state you're from, what college is going to win the Nationals this year. That's it for me, guys. World champs and everything we do, baby. And go blue.